Now we're ready to learn the fifth section, which is called Communion with Universal Balance. And we're going to start with the first movement, which is called Bouncing Springs. In this movement, the movement of the arms as it corresponds to the descending, ascending springs of the legs, which you have learned in the first section. The movements of the arms are very, very important because it coordinates the descending, ascending springs of the legs with the actual centers of the spinal column and allow the whole body to remain within the 7 centers open at the same time that the movement occurs. So we're going to do the movement as it is, and then we're going to explain details of it. Okay? So we'll start in the stanza 0 point, which we completed the 4th section, and then the 4th section arrive all the way up to infinity, and then you have 4 counts to descend, all the way to crown, 4 counts to go very gently to foundation, and then the movement began. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. And that's the beginning of the next motion. So now it is important to explain to you that the movement of the arms going to the suspended diamond in the first part of the movement, going to the suspended diamond where the descending spring begins, it goes from foundation to the suspended diamond. And when you learn it in the first section, you just learn your arms. And the way you learn it in 4 counts. We went 4 counts up, 1, 2, 3, and 4 counts descending down to foundation. And when you learn it, and when you learn this movement, we'll explain to you the nature of the releasing way, the passing through way, called the releasing way. And what you learn is that as you ascend through the centers, just with the arms by itself, when you ascend from the centers, the movement of bringing the energy through the spine all the way up to the suspended diamond into the crown, that the movement released the energy through the arms. And that was to avoid the idea that you're just going up and down with the arms. It's not, because if I do that, then I raise in the shoulders and I create pressure within the segments of the spine. So the movement as it ascends from foundation, it releases the wave until it arrives to suspended diamond, and it descends and ascends to go to foundation. And you learn it in 4 counts. Then when you learn to go, the second part of the movement, when you went to the moon, you learn it 4 counts to go to the moon, 4 counts to go to earth, and then 2 counts to go to foundation, in order to repeat the movement again, to go to the moon, again to earth, and then again to foundation. So this time was 10 counts. Now, in the second section, actually no, in the 4th section, when we did it in the 4th section then, instead of doing it in 10 counts, this movement of going to the moon and earth and foundation, we did it in counts of 4. So we did it 4 counts to go to the moon, and then 4 counts to go all the way down in flowing way and foundation. And the reason that we did it in the second section, in the 4th section, I keep saying the second section, actually the 4th section, the reason that we did it is to increase and assist for the momentum. Now, in this particular movement, the first movement of the 5th section, the descending, ascending springs of the bouncing springs, the momentum of the movement as it descends and ascends demands from us 3 counts. So the 3 counts descending to foundation, 3 counts ascending to suspended diamond, and so on, in order not to create grinding with the descending spring. Because remember that we want this quality of the motion that as you're descending, you're ascending, and as you're descending, you are continuously assisting the legs not to get stuck in the joints of the knees, but to allow the ground to become like a spring. That's the reason of the bouncing springs. So I would like to do the movement one time, just only the arms. And then the second time do the arms and the movement with the arms and the legs, okay? So the movements of the arms by themselves, just practicing very, very gently, is like that. Remember that you arrive the last movement of the fourth section, it ends in infinity, and then you have 4 counts to go all the way down to get to crown, and then you have 4 counts to gather foundation, and now we go 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, almost like you wanted to go descending spring, but just right now just the arm. This is the 3rd time. 3, 1, 2, 3, and now when we do the outer form of the movement, going to the moon, 3 counts, and then inflowing wave foundation, 3 counts. 1, 2, moon, 1, 2, 3. This is the last time. 2, moon, 1, 2, 3, and then the last time it goes to moon and up into infinity, or heaven actually, to start the next movement. Okay? So now let's do the motion again, incorporating arms and legs at the same time. Okay? Starting in the connection of the first placement, natural placement, arriving to infinity, and then 1, 2, 3, crown. 1, 2, 3, 4, raising through the suspended arm. 3, 1, 2, descending spring. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, going to the moon. 2, 3, descending spring. 2, 3, moon. 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, going to moon and arriving to moon, going above the crown, ready to begin the next motion. Okay. I'd like to clarify going to the moon. And remember in the first section where we explained to you that going to foundation to the moon, the angle that you're learning to move the arms and extend the arm from the delicate heart into the moon is actually what activates the thoracic vertebra and allows you to start going vertical through the movement. So remember that all this practice that you learn in the first section now are very important, because it's not just a connection to the spine, it's also a connection to the descending spring and then a connection to the ascending spring. So you're going down into it and up through it. And the going from the descending spring, from the ascending of the spine and finding the thoracic placement is what allows you to go all the way up into the head. So that is very important. Also, remember that in this movement of going to the moon, what before used to be 6 counts, now it's only 3. And you go in 1, 2, 3. So the descending spring is the same as the inner arc in my spine, and then the ascending spring is the same as the opening of the spine going to the moon. Yeah? So it's important to remember that. And also, when we initiate the movement, remember from the 4th section, we go all the way to infinity. This is the first time that we go in to expansion and to crown and 4 counts. Before we did it in 8. Actually, no, this was count 2, and then you have 2 counts to go to expansion, 4, and then you have 4 counts to go to crown. So we had 6 counts to be able to make sure that we went from the highest outer arc of the spine to the place of vertical extension of the spine, and then the inner extension of the inner arc as you arrive to crown. So there were many, many changes that were taking place in the center of gravity. Now, all that occurs for the first time in 4 counts. So now you are familiar with all the gravitational expansion, the changing, and you can do the exact changes that exist in 6 counts now in 4. So you're beginning to see now the value of learning in the beginning a little bit in a larger portion. The movements were much more spaced between each other, and now they're becoming a little bit more into momentum and a little bit more connected to each other. So, but the form of the movement remains the same. Another form of saying, even though we go into the moon, and then we in 3 counts, we go in all the way, inflowing way to foundation. we trace the same geometry that we did before when we went to Earth and in flowing wave foundation. It's just that the form of the movement allow the actual vertebra not to go down into itself and to remain open, so the vertebra expand as I am descending down. The idea is that I don't want to go down with the spine and up with the spine like that, but I would like to be able to sense through the motion that my spine goes up as I'm descending and up with me as I coming back, down, up when I'm descending. So the descending spring in reality is an extension of the spinal column. Yeah? And you can only get to experience that through the synchronization of the form of the movement. It's not a willful desire of the mind, I'm not going to go down. It's just the actual form allows you to descend and go up at the same time, and then bring yourself up with the legs at the same time. So your legs and your knees are not really grinding to go down, but actually creating more and more a spiral. Yes? Wonderful. In this fifth section, just about every single movement incorporates or is actually part of a descending, ascending spring. So that's the reason it's so important to be able to really begin to comprehend and understand the movement of the arms and the upper spine as they correspond to the legs. Now, in the descending spring, the knees are opening to the direction of the diagonal of the arm, like a diamond. Remember, like a diamond here is the same that we did in the releases before, but it's important that the knee is always aligned in relation to the center of the feet. So each knee is open as a diamond out through it. So the knees don't start going to an angle forward, because then it creates a displacement in the knee and a displacement in the hip joint. So remember that the knees are very, very gently opened through the direction of your feet, each foot, as you're descending and then as you're ascending. And then the descension eventually through the movements of the arm becomes an ascension of the spine. So you're creating those two forces. The spine suspends itself through the movement itself, and then the legs bend and the legs extend. But it's very important, because remember the stanza is not here. You see a little bit, because then I cannot open the knees anymore. So you begin to incorporate in a stanza that is natural to you. It's not the stanza of the ballet technique. It's not that they start open like that and then you open sideways, but it's actually a natural connection that opens the hip joints and releases the hip joint through the center of the legs, and align the knees to the ankle and the center of your feet. So at any one moment you can bend your knees and touch the floor inside of this opening of the legs. So each leg is a spiral rotating up, bringing you up through it. So it's not that the legs just bending up and down in this diagonal, are spirals moving down, spirals going up. So that's what you're creating, spirals. And the spiral of the leg is actually activated through the movements of the arms and the movements of the spine. Okay? Wonderful. So we're going to do now from the transition from the last movement in the fourth section, getting into the stanza, and then into infinity, in order to do the mandala, and in order to start the bouncing springs. All right, so we're going to go very gently in the floor, very softly into the salutation. Here we are. And now, this is the last movement in the fourth section. This is 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. And the second movement begins.